Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to this week's episode of the Quarterdeck. This week, we're going to continue with our reading of our book, With the 1st Marine Division in Iraq of 2003, No Greater Friend, No Worst Enemy, and we're going to talk about how the 1st Marine Division is going to deceive the Iraqi army. Because, of course, they knew that they were watching everything that they were doing with all the training and everything that they were doing in Kuwait. They could see them. But, of course, they're going to use that to their advantage to deceive them. So that way they really have no idea exactly what the division is actually planning. In our hero highlights, we're going to take a look at the life and the heroism of First Lieutenant Robert Murray Hanson of the United States Marine Corps and see what he did to earn himself the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Drop and give me 25. I'm the gunny.
It's time for the gunny.
The Quarterdeck. Lights. Get online right now. You got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hello, my bunch of knuckle-dragging, beer-drinking, hard-charging devil dogs. You're listening to The Quarterdeck. I am your host, Miguel, the Gunny Signs.
Get off the bus!
I do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
The Quarterdeck. Well, here we are now in the month of July, and I hope that everybody had a great and wonderful 4th of July this week. It's kind of weird, though, this week because it was actually during the week and not the weekend. For us, obviously, this year has been something that, you never expected to anything to happen. The house fire happened on the 30th of April, so May's gone, June's gone, so 2 months. And it's just been crazy. I mean, we've been going through the steps, the processes of getting everything completed and get it done. We had our final meeting with the architect and engineer last week, and now we finalized pretty much basically where we wanted all of the electrical outlets, the TV outlets, the way that we wanted our shower heads to be ran, because if you guys remember, I told you guys that I've always wanted one of those water jet showers that has the waterfall rain thing on top. And then, of course, the jets on the side of the wall that spray you down when you're in there in the shower. So finally, I'm going to be able to have that inside of my home the way that I wanted to. I guess it's a blessing in disguise because we're actually going to be able to modify our house exactly the way that we wanted to. And especially, to me, it's great because I'm going to be able to have my wife have her walk-in closet the way that she wanted to from the get-go anyway. So now we're going to be able to move some of those walls around. And talking to him, it's not very much moving that we're doing. I think one of the walls that we're actually moving back, the ones that my wife wants her closet to be in, that one is an actual load-bearing wall. So they're going to have to dig out the foundation, reinsert the foundation there to give it the stabilization for the support of the wall. That wasn't there anymore because it's only going to be moving back maybe about 10 feet from there and be reinstalled again anyway. But to give it the same kind of support that it needs, they're going to have to move it back. And then also we talked to him about possibly adding some outlets on the floor with a little brass plate on it like we've seen in so many other houses to allow us to be able to have a power outlet right there next to the couch. And for us, it's a good thing because we have recliners, or we had recliners that all of them required power, and there was a total of 5 of them that needed to be plugged in, and that would be a perfect spot for us to be able to plug it in and have the power under the couch where you can't see any of the cords or anything like that, or extension cords to make it look ugly under the couch. I mean, you can't even see it anyway, but still, it's safer to have it on there and for us to be able to have that power connected there. And a plus for me too, because now once I set up the surround sound system there, since there are wireless speakers, they do require power, but there's no wire going to the actual little receiver. It's easier to just plug them in there. So that'll make it easier for us to be able to do. But let's talk about a little bit more now about the Marine Corps and things that have been going on. Now, right now, 5th Battalion, 11th Marines, they're actually preparing for a reunion. Now, we did a reunion about 3 years ago. Was it 3? No, 4 years ago that we did down there in Camp Pendleton, California. We actually did it down there at Las Pulgas and had everything set up there, barbecue, catering services, and a demonstration of the new artillery pieces and all those different things that were out there. And this year they opted to have the Semper Fi Fund actually sponsor the reunion, and they're going to be helping the Marines travel to Houston, Texas. And that's the one good thing about the Semper Fi Fund. I mean, they assist the veterans, the service members, or families in some ways that you can't even imagine. They are purchasing the plane tickets for the individuals to get their hotel and transportation from the hotel to the reunion, all at no cost to the veterans to be able to attend the reunion. And it's going on in Texas, down there in Houston. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm not going to be able to go just for the fact that I'm still dealing with all this stuff with the house, and I want to make sure that I'm here in case anything new pops up or anything else that needs to be done, and that make myself available to get that stuff done. I mean, with that going on and all those things going on as far as this and medical stuff, the doctors, all those things never change. Those things are going to be ongoing and keep going, and it just hopes that, eventually that all of us veterans and everybody that has come back from any kind of combat environment or anything like that are able to ensure that we get any assistance or help or anything that we may need just to make our lives better, more comfortable is all I can say, because it's never going to change. Things are only going to go downhill from here, because the older we get, the more our body is going to break down. And that sucks. It sucks because, can't really enjoy the things that, especially that I used to do. I used to love playing softball. So I'm missing that out. I can't do that with my son. I can't take him out and really play around with him very much, because I just can't be out on my feet for very, very long. And that really, really sucks. But it's something that I got to deal with and make it myself more available during the day to be able to do certain things that we can do together that doesn't require me to be running around, jumping, and all those things. I mean, those are things that I loved to do when I was a kid, and I understand that kids today are a lot different. They are not outside as much as we used to be. They're more technological smart than we were because of all the different technology advances that we've had. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm trying to get my son to understand that, hey, we do got to do certain other things besides sit here around here and not too much. So, but it's kind of hard to do that with the heat. It was freaking 118 degrees yesterday. Miserable. It was freaking miserable. So it's so it's hard to go outside and actually do things, because you really can't do anything till the evening, and not even the evening, not till about 8, 9 o'clock at night, when it drops down at least about 100 degrees or 90 degrees in the evenings, and then you're able to do stuff. But then it's nighttime, so it's not much that we can do. Like this morning, I took Gunny out for his little morning walk. When I wouldn't even consider it a walk, because I walk him down the block to where they're doing the construction in our house. He goes and does his business there in what used to be our front yard. And I say it used to be because, man, they had to use the small little bobcat to be able to reach the roof to get the tiles off. And it completely destroyed the landscaping in the front yard. The tubing, the piping, the PVC pipe for the sprinkler system, they went in there and they had to kind of not excavate, but they had to make it a little ramp way for them to be able to reach the edge of the house. So all that is gone. So now I'm going to have to figure out so I can send pictures to the insurance agent so they can cover all the costs of all that stuff, because it was part of the fire because of what they're doing to fix the house and everything that needs to be done as well. It's going to have to get redone, and I'm not sure if he included that in the budget or the amount that he paid out for the repairs of the house. So that's going to be a whole nother topic that I got to deal with him and talk to him about. But let's keep the positive thoughts and that we are able to get this stuff done here soon. And my goodness, it's been 2 months, and they told me 3 to 4 months, but I'm thinking that maybe they're saying 2 to 3 months after the fact that they done all this demolishing and actually the house is ready to start to being rebuilt. But that's a good thing. Like I said, we had the final meeting. He submitted the actual construction plans, the blueprints, to the city for approval, so that way they can go ahead and get started with all this stuff as soon as they're finished with all this demolition. And I heard a rumor today. I'm not sure if it's true, if it's legit or whatever, but with the Marine Corps downsizing and all those things that are going on now, there's so many units that are starting to get disbanded. And I heard that they're planning on disbanding 5th Battalion, 11th Marines. I hope this is not true. I am going to definitely do some more research on what the heck is going on, because there is absolutely no way that I believe that they can take away that unit because of the history, the traditions, and everything that unit has gone through. And hey, it's my unit. I bleed 5th Battalion, 11th Marines, and that's what we're going over in our book. If we can remember in our books with the Marines in Iraq in 2003, we're talking about the 11th Marines and their role that they played in the actual war on terror starting in 2003 when they headed off down there to Kuwait in preparations to head into Baghdad. So here's to keeping our fingers crossed, and hopefully that I get all the information that I need so I can, let you guys know what I find out about the disbanding of other different units in the Marine Corps, which is sad because the Marine Corps is downsizing so much. It's downsizing so much, and so many Marines that want to stay into the Marine Corps just simply can't because they are trying to downsize and get Marines out of the Marines. So it sucks because we're losing so many good Marines that are getting out or being forced out. I won't say they're getting out themselves because they're being forced out because of the space. They don't meet the qualifications that they have in order to keep them into the Marine Corps. So let's continue to do some research. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys find anything out or you guys hear any rumors or facts that are out there, hey, put them on our Facebook page, The Quarterdeck with Gunny Science. Send them on there, and then we'll do some more research together, and we'll get the information out to you guys. Are you looking for a photographer who can capture the most important moments in your life? Look no further than Miguel Science Photography. Miguel Science is an award-winning photographer with a passion for capturing the beauty and emotions of weddings, family portraits, and special events. With years of experience and a creative eye, Miguel Science will create stunning images that you'll treasure for years to come. Whether you're looking for a traditional wedding album, a unique family portrait, or a professional headshot for your business, Miguel Science Photography has the expertise to bring your vision to life. From the initial consultation to the final product, Miguel Science will work with you every step of the way to ensure that your images reflect your unique style and personality. Don't settle for mediocre photographs that simply document an event. Trust Miguel Science Photography to create timeless images that capture the essence of your special moments. Book your session today and experience the magic of Miguel Science Photography. Visit Miguel Science Photography online at miguelsciencephotography.com to see examples of his work and schedule your appointment today.
What we're gonna do right here is go back. Way back into time.
Last week, all the Marines in the 1st Marine Division were so busy calibrating, getting their weapons accurate to ensure that they're going to be able to actually engage the enemy once they headed across the border into Iraq. This week is going to be no different because the division was so busy doing all the training, making sure that all the weapon systems were zeroed, their BZO was correct. And of course, the Iraqi army could see the division and knew exactly what they were doing when they were doing all that training. And this was going to be used to the division's advantage because, yes, they could see them, but however, they're going to use that to their advantage to deceive them, to make sure that they really don't understand exactly what the division is going to actually be doing. And that's going to play a huge role as we get a little further on into what actually happened when the division was moving down Highway 1 and actually heading into Baghdad, and how that's going to play such a vital role in the way that the Iraqi army expected the division to actually move up the highway and head all the way up into Baghdad in the complete opposite way that they were actually going to be moving into. Now, when we're talking about how the division was actually utilizing all this training and deception that they were using with the Iraqi forces was, for example, all the time that we were training down there in the range and we were shooting our artillery pieces and training and making sure that we're shooting accurate and everything, of course they could hear everything. They could see us shooting the artillery pieces, and they could hear and see how many artillery pieces the battalion actually had. And of course, because they shook the ground tremendously, and they could feel that across the border. So that, made them a little bit nervous about what was going on down there, and they could actually mentally preparing themselves for defeat before the division even crossed over to the Iraqi border. But this week, let's talk a little bit about how they desensitized them, the plan to actually desensitize the Iraqi army that the division was going to have put into place. The division's actions in Kuwait would likely be observed and reported by well-developed Iraqi intelligence networks, including observers on Jabal Sanam. Nothing the division did in northern Kuwait north of the LSAs would be unobserved by the enemy. By the same token, this network was susceptible to deception or saturation of the network with repeated reports of U.S. forces repositioning in Kuwait. The G2 laid it out quite simply. Since we cannot hide, we must deceive. The division crafted a desensitization plan to accustom the Iraqis to large-scale ground movements in Kuwait. This desensitization plan became a significant theme with the division's planned rehearsals prior to crossing the line of departure. Since late February, the division had been conducting rehearsals across northern Kuwait. Combat elements of the division in transit between the LSAs and the Yurdari Range areas began to take detours through more northern areas. Small units of Marines became a regular presence near the Kuwaiti berm. At one point, this presence became too aggressive when the United Nations and the UN observers complained vigorously to the UN headquarters and alerted the international press. After this, Marines pursued the reconnaissance in a less overt manner. The division also took the opportunity to hesitate the Iraqis to the presence of the Pioneer UAV as missions began to fly over southern Iraq. The division continued to lean forward and took advantage of each and every day of the diplomatic maneuvering and the opportunity to train for military action. This training included several CP displacements of the division forward and the main CPs, as well as all of the RCTs and separate battalions. During combat operations, the division planned to employ the main and forward CPs in a leapfrog manner, each displacing as far forward as possible as an attempt to exempt the communication ranges of the division, and they moved through Iraq. As each CP displaced in succession, it would travel just behind the lead element of the column to ensure Division G2 was continuous. The idea of desensitizing the Iraqi border forces became an operational reality as the division conducted the CP displacement exercise on 23 February. Although moving the CPs and maneuver units forward to the border area, then moving them back to the LSAs, was designed to have the effects of desensitizing enemy observers both in Kuwait and in Jabal Sanam. These movements to and from the training area also provided excellent opportunities for all CPs to refine their movement plans, convoy procedures, CP setups, communication support plans, communication equipment installation, and operation. During this drill, the division moved the forward CP to a position in northern Kuwait. Once the forward had assumed control, the division main CP displaced to a point even further to the north, at the outer limits of the range fans of the Iraqi long-range tube artillery, as well as within the line of sight of the Jabal Saddam. After operating for several days from this location, the division main retrograded Camp Matilda. The division's forward followed, returning to Camp Matilda in one march. As they departed for the northern Kuwaiti areas, the Marines registered the terrain in their minds. All knew that the next time they stood on this ground, it would be to direct the division across the line of departure into the face of the enemy. As part of the desensitization plan, the division developed an emissions control plan, or ECOM, plan that ensured that there would be no unexpectedly abrupt changes in the level of the division's communications during any portion of the rehearsal phase. Lieutenant Colonel Brian Barton and Deputy G6 drafted a series of MCOM standards. These MCOM standards were designed to control the division radio emissions and support the division's scheme of maneuver while also providing the ability to mask movements by limiting the Iraqi signals intelligence gathering ability. Prior to the commencement of hostilities, the division also implemented the 1MEF G6 Information Assurance Plan called River City. This plan imposed 3 different security levels in non-secure data transmitted within the MEF. The rotating restriction on the non-secure data was designated to keep a level of uncertainty on the network as a primary defense against hackers from outside of the division and the 1MEF. Now, if you can remember when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about all the new equipment that the division was going to be actually using when they actually headed into Iraq. I mean, this is the first time that we were actually using satellite phones. Each battalion had a satellite phone for them to be able to actually conduct missions to communicate with each other in case that the communications did not work properly, because this gear was so new that they really had no idea if it all was going to work according to plan. Yes, they had the Blue Force trackers that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, but this was something that we've never had before. We never used Blue Force trackers before. This was equipment that the Army have had for years and years already. And of course, just like being the bastard children of everything, the Marine Corps always receives all the equipment that the Army, the Air Force, that they don't want anymore. Then we finally get it, and then we make do with what we got and make sure that it works to the best of the ability that we have. And this was the case with a lot of the vehicles, a lot of the communications that the vehicles had. Even though they were using a lot of these new technologies that they were using, it was going to be difficult to get the planning and everything put into place to ensure that all this communications was going to be put into place and it was going to actually work properly the way that the commanders were intended to have this whole thing actually work for them, to make sure that the division made it into Iraq as quickly and as fast as possible. And when they're talking about the Udairi Range, for many, many days, and I can remember going back and forth from Matilda down there to the Udairi Range, to the border, to where the berms were at down there, and we could see into Iraq. And the only thing that we really saw down there was that one hill, Safwan Hill. And we'll talk more about Safwan Hill a little bit later once the division actually moves down there to the northern portion of the Udairi Range for the very last time. In that same spot that they were talking about, the Marines were standing there, and they knew that the very next time that they would be setting foot in those same areas would be when the division would actually be engaging in combat with artillery fire into Iraq and preparing for the division to actually move into Baghdad. Hero highlight. This week in our Hero Highlights, we take a look at the life of First Lieutenant Robert Murray Hansen. Second Lieutenant Robert M. Hansen, who shot down 25 Japanese planes from the South Pacific skies, was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. A master of individual air combat, he downed 20 enemy planes in 6 consecutive flying days. First Lieutenant Hansen was commended in the citation accompanying the Medal of Honor for his 6 bold attacks against 6 enemy torpedo bombers 1 November 1943 over Bougainville Island, and for bringing down 4 Zeros, the premier Japanese fighter, while fighting them alone over New Britain on 24 January of 1944. First Lieutenant Hansen arrived in the South Pacific in June of 1943, and his daring tactics and total disregard for death soon became well known. His fatal crash occurred one day before his 24th birthday, last seen on 3 February 1944, when his plane crashed into the sea while he was flying an escort mission over Rabaul, New Britain. He was subsequently declared killed in action. A member of the famed Fighting Corsair Squadron, the Ace was shot down only once before his final flight, when a Zero caught him over Bougainville Island, bringing his plane down on the ocean. He paddled for 6 hours in a rubber life raft before being rescued by a destroyer. Robert M. Hansen was a son of a Methodist missionaries who were in Indiana at the time of his birth. In Lucknow, Indiana, his playmates were Hindu children. After attending junior high school in the United States, he returned to India to become light heavyweight and heavyweight wrestling champion of the United Provinces. In spring of 1938, on his way back to the United States to attend college, he bicycled his way through Europe and was in Vienna during the Apocalypse. Through attending Hamline University, St. Paul, Minnesota, at the time of the attack on Pearl Harbor, he enlisted for naval flight training in May 1942 and earned his wings and a Marine Corps commission as a second lieutenant on 19 February 1943 in Corpus Christi, Texas. The Medal of Honor was presented to the lieutenant's mother by Major General Louis G. Merritt on 19 August 1944 in Boston, Massachusetts. The Quarterdeck. If you're just joining us, you've been listening to The Quarterdeck with your host, Miguel the Gunny Science. And I got to tell you guys, it's so great to finally be able to continue with our reading of our book. And this week, we talked about how the 1st Marine Division was going to deceive the Iraqi army, how they're going to use their interest in what the division was doing in Kuwait during that time to their advantage, to ensure that they really had no idea. They really had no idea how many troops were there, how many artillery pieces that were actually there, and how they were planning on maneuvering once they actually headed across the border and actually headed into Iraq. In our Hero Highlights, we talked about First Lieutenant Robert Murray Hansen and what he did. And man, what a pilot he was. He shot down those 25 Japanese planes in the South Pacific. I mean, can you say a Top Gun from back in the day? I mean, these were gentlemen, men, young men that were out there fighting the wars, and not the planes that we have today that are basically ran by computers. No, they were doing this on their own. So again, another great hero, another great American, and the things that he did to ensure this nation's safety, and we continue to have all the rights that we have until this day. Always remember that you can ask any questions or leave us any comments on our webpage on Facebook on the Quarterdeck with Gunny Science. So feel free to send us a comment, leave us a message, ask a question so we can go ahead and ensure that we answer the question here on the podcast every single week. If you haven't subscribed, remember that you can subscribe to be notified every single Thursday when the new episode uploads. So this way you won't miss any single episode. So here's to you having a great weekend. Enjoy spending time with your family and have a great week. Until next week, this is Miguel the Gunny Signs sounding Liberty Call.
Get off the bus!
I do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Transition.